Welcome to the deep dive. You wanted to understand the legacy of Queen Elizabeth II, so we dove into some pretty dense academic articles and historical analysis
Oh, yeah.
to bring you the most fascinating insights.
Yeah.
Think of it as a crash course on the British monarchy, but with all the boring bits taken out.
Yeah, it's going to be a fascinating journey.
Right.
We're not just looking back at her 70-year reign, but exploring how the monarchy itself needs to change
Right.
to survive in a modern Britain and a world grappling with the impacts of colonialism.
This isn't just about history.
Yeah.
It's about the future.
Absolutely.
And the article we're diving into really gets into the nitty-gritty
Yeah.
of the symbolism of the monarchy and
Yeah.
all the challenges that it's facing right now.
Absolutely. One of the key takeaways is that the British monarchy's success in the 20th century
Okay.
was quite unique.
Okay.
While many monarchies around the world faded away,
Right.
the British one endured by adapting and carefully crafting its public image.
Okay, but how did they do that? Was it all just pomp and circumstance?
Not exactly.
Okay.
There's this concept called the invention of tradition,
Oh, okay.
which basically means that a lot of what we associate with the monarchy,
Yeah.
ceremonies, the
Yeah.
rituals, even the image of the royal family as a symbol of national unity,
Right.
were strategically developed,
Oh, but-
particularly in the late 19th and early 20th centuries.
So it's not all just centuries-old tradition.
Right.
They actually had to, work at it?
Precisely. Think about it like a brand.
Yep.
They had to market themselves to the public.
Okay.
They used things like
Yeah.
carefully planned ceremonies,
Right.
royal weddings, and
Yeah.
even things like the adoption of radio broadcasts
Oh, wow.
by King George V during World War II.
Yeah.
This allowed him to connect with the public in a new and personal way.
Oh, interesting.
It showed that they were willing to embrace new technology to stay relevant.
That's incredible. It's like they were pioneers of modern media relations, in a way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Queen Elizabeth II inherited this carefully constructed system
Oh.
and took it a step further with the rise of mass media.
Right.
Her televised coronation in 1953 was a turning point.
Right.
It created this whole new relationship with the public,
Yeah.
one that was mediated through television.
Wow. I never realized how much that televised coronation shaped the public's perception of the monarchy.
Yeah.
It's fascinating how media can influence even something as seemingly traditional as the crown.
It really does highlight the power of image and
Yeah.
how the monarchy used it to its advantage.
Right.
And then, of course, there was the outpouring of emotion
Yeah.
after her death.
Right. That was a huge moment.
Yeah.
It felt like the whole world was watching.
It was a moment of shared national experience,
Right.
a reminder of the Queen's enduring image as a symbol of unity
Yeah.
and stability,
Yeah.
particularly during times of rapid social and political change.
But even with all that emotion and unity on display, the article doesn't shy away from the challenges
No,
facing the monarchy, right?
absolutely not.
Yeah.
It acknowledges that
But-
underneath that surface of unity,
Right.
the UK is actually grappling with some pretty serious divisions.
Okay.
Divisions that became even more apparent after the Queen's passing.
Okay, so what kind of divisions are we talking about?
We're talking about deep-seated issues like Brexit,
Yeah.
the push for Scottish and Northern Irish independence,
Right.
social class disparities,
Yeah.
generational differences,
Okay.
and political polarization.
So it's not just a few cracks in the foundation.
Right.
This is like a whole fault line running through British society.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And the monarchy,
Yeah.
which is supposed to represent unity
Right.
and bring the nation together,
Yeah.
is caught right in the middle of it all.
Right in the thick of it.
Yeah.
So how do these divisions actually play out in real life? Are there specific examples that really highlight these tensions?
Absolutely. Let's start with Scotland.
Good.
The independence referendum in 2014 might have resulted in a no vote,
Yeah.
but it was a pretty close call.
Right.
And the issue is far from settled.
Yeah.
And then there's Northern Ireland.
Okay.
Recent census data shows that Catholics now outnumber Protestants,
Oh, wow.
which adds fuel to the fire
Right.
of those seeking unification with the Republic of Ireland.
Wow, I knew about the tensions in those regions, but I hadn't considered those recent developments.
Yeah,
Sounds like things are even more complex than I realized.
they certainly are.
Yeah.
And then within England itself,
Okay.
We're seeing a rise in English nationalism,
Mm-hmm.
which is another piece of the puzzle.
Right.
It's interesting to note that you see more St. George's crosses the English flag these days,
Yeah.
sometimes even replacing the Union Jack.
I've noticed that too. I didn't think much of it at the time, but now that you mention it, it
Yeah.
does seem like a pretty symbolic shift.
It really does suggest a change in how people are seeing their identity
Right.
within the UK.
Mm-hmm.
It raises all sorts of questions about what it even means to be British
Yeah.
in the 21st century.
Right.
And for the monarchy,
Yeah.
which is supposed to represent that unity,
Yeah.
it's a real challenge
Right.
trying to fit into this increasingly fractured landscape.
Yeah, it seems like almost every country is struggling with these sorts of identity crises these days.
Yeah.
But for the UK, it feels especially complex with all
Yeah.
the different layers of history
Yeah.
and national identity.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it's not just about internal divisions either.
Okay.
There's also the legacy of colonialism to deal with,
Right.
which is something that's become increasingly difficult to ignore.
Right. This is what I find really fascinating.
Yeah.
For so long, it felt like the monarchy's role in colonialism was kind of brushed under the rug.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's front and center in the public discourse.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And it's not going away anytime soon.
Right.
The article highlights some really powerful examples of how this issue is playing out.
Okay.
Like Queen Elizabeth II's visit to Amritsar in 1997,
Mm-hmm.
the site of that horrific massacre of Indians by British troops back in 1919.
Where I remember reading about that, there were huge calls for her to apologize during that visit.
Yeah.
But she stopped short of a full apology.
Exactly. She acknowledged the sadness of the event,
Mm.
but also said history cannot be rewritten,
Right.
which for many wasn't enough.
And it feels like that whole issue of apologizing for past wrongs
Yeah.
is only gaining more and more momentum.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just limited to India.
You're spot on.
Yeah.
We're seeing growing demands for the repatriation of artifacts taken during the colonial era
Right.
from countries all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a major, major challenge for King Charles III.
Yeah.
How do you reconcile the history of the monarchy? A history that's very much intertwined with colonialism,
Right.
with these increasingly vocal demands
Right.
for justice and accountability.
It almost feels like the monarchy is stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Right.
On one hand, you have tradition and this need to maintain this image of timeless continuity.
Yeah.
But on the other,
Mm-hmm.
there's all this pressure to modernize
Right.
and address the very real harms of the past.
That's a great way to frame it.
Yeah.
And that's essentially the dilemma of what this article calls the postmodern monarchy.
I've heard that term before, but I'm not sure I fully grasp it.
Okay.
Can you explain what that means
Yeah.
in this context?
Of course.
Okay.
The idea of a postmodern monarchy captures this tension
Okay.
between tradition and the need for change. It recognizes that the monarchy can't simply exist as a relic of the past.
Mm-hmm.
It has to adapt
Yeah.
to survive in a world that's constantly evolving.
Right.
And part of that adaptation
Yeah.
means grappling with difficult questions about its own role in history,
Right.
including its involvement in colonialism.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's like they're trying to navigate this really tricky tightrope
Mm-hmm.
between holding on to the past and acknowledging the need for change.
Yeah.
And while Queen Elizabeth II, despite all these challenges,
Yeah.
remained personally popular,
Mm-hmm.
it seems like the institution itself
Right.
might be facing an uphill battle.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that's reflected in the data.
Okay.
Support for the monarchy, especially amongst younger generations,
Mm-hmm.
is waning.
Oh, really? What does the data show?
Well,
Okay.
for example, a recent YouGov poll found that only 33% of Gen Z supports the monarchy,
Oh, wow.
compared to 77% of those aged 65 and over.
Wow, that's a huge generational divide.
It is.
Yeah.
And it puts King Charles III in a really tough spot.
Right.
Does he try to appeal to younger generations,
Right.
even if it risks alienating his older,
Yeah.
more conservative base? Right. Tough choices.
Does he address the legacy of colonialism head on?
Yeah.
Potentially opening up a Pandora's box of criticism and demands for reparations.
Yeah.
These are tough choices.
It really does feel like a pivotal moment for the monarchy.
Yeah,
They can't just keep calm and carry on anymore.
that's exactly right.
Right.
The decisions King Charles III makes in the next few years
Yeah.
will likely determine the fate of the monarchy for generations to come.
Right.
Will he be a reformer, willing to break with tradition?
Yeah.
Or will he try to cling to the past, even as the world around him changes.
Yeah.
It's going to be fascinating to watch.
It really makes you wonder what purpose does the monarchy
Yeah.
serve in a modern democracy? Is it just about tradition and tourism,
Right.
or is there something more to it?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's easy to forget,
Yeah.
especially after a reign as long as Queen Elizabeth II's,
Right.
that the monarchy's survival was never a given.
Mm.
It wasn't just about longevity.
Right.
It was about
Yeah.
carefully navigating change
Okay.
while still appearing unchanging.
That's a fascinating paradox. Like
Yeah.
trying to be both a symbol of the past
Right.
and a relevant force in the present.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And now King Charles III has to walk that same tightrope,
Right.
but in even windier conditions.
He's definitely got his work cut out for him.
He does. He's inherited a legacy.
Yeah.
It's both a blessing and a burden.
Right.
The Queen's personal popularity provided a buffer.
Yeah.
But now those deep societal divisions
Right.
and the unresolved issues of the past
Yeah.
are unavoidable.
So, taking a step back.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot of ground here.
Right.
We talked about the invention of tradition, the impact of media,
Yeah.
the challenges of a divided society,
Right.
and the looming shadow of colonialism.
Yeah.
What stands out to you as the most surprising insight?
I think for me,
Yeah.
it's the fragility of it all.
We tend to think of monarchies as these ancient, immutable institutions. But they're not.
Yeah.
They're constantly evolving,
Right.
adapting to survive.
Yeah.
And the British monarchy is at a real crossroads. Its future hinges on the choices King Charles III makes
Right.
and his ability to connect with a public
Yeah.
that's increasingly questioning its relevance.
That's like the monarchy is a mirror reflecting back the
Yeah.
hopes,
Right.
anxieties, and contradictions of British society itself.
Yeah.
And right now that reflection is pretty complex.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
The monarchy's fate is intertwined with the fate of Britain itself.
Well, on that somewhat thought-provoking note, I
Yeah.
think it's time to wrap up this deep dive.
Okay.
But before we go, one final question for you, dear listener.
Yeah.
What kind of monarchy,
Right.
if any,
Yeah.
do you think Britain needs in the 21st century?
It's a good question.
It's something worth considering as we watch this new chapter unfold.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.